Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to worship, and it's good to have all of you here on this Mother's Day. Is it cold in here or is it just me? It's cool. Okay, all right. So maybe what I shouldn't try to do is hasten on summer with this kind of clothing. I don't know, but I'm freezing this morning. I'm going to take a bit of a detour today, unanticipated detour. So as you can see, the sermon series is called Star Power. And we're talking about people that we know, celebrities of one kind or another, but also sort of how their lives mesh with faith. And I was going to start with Dolly Parton today, and I was going to head to the book of Ruth. And I was working on that last night, yesterday afternoon, and I was at home and I was working, and I ran out of legal pad. And those of you who know me know that I can't think without a legal pad, right? And better if it's yellow. And so I swung back here and came to grab another legal pad, and lo and behold, I got here, and there's this package waiting for me. I got to show you this. It's just crazy. It couldn't have come at a better time. My two of my Florida cousins, Diane and Kay, are cleaning out their childhood home. Aunt Marion's been gone for a few years. Uncle Jack died this last year. And they are finally selling the house, and they have a mountain of junk to go through because my uncle was a collector of everything. And so they put together a little care package for me, things that they thought I might like to have. And I opened this puppy up, and I have to tell you, I was just floored. So it started with this. And it doesn't look like much, but it means something to me. I'll tell you more about that later. And then there's a few more of those. And then here comes this. Oh, I know that pattern. That's Grandma Grindberg. And then the back has this kind of silky stuff. Oh, gee. This is how she did everything with quilts. It was so cool. And then I found this, which was... You know what this is? It's not just a quilt. It's a quilt for Diane and Kay's baby dolls. Grandma Grindberg again, okay? See where I'm going with this? And then, I can't imagine they give this up because mine is long gone. This was our baby quilt. She made one for each of the grandchildren. And, oh my goodness. I had to share this with you today because it's Mother's Day. And it just brought back a flood of memories. I won't go into the rest of it. There's more stuff here than I can shake a stick at. But brought back a flood of memories about this woman who's really second most important woman in my life, next to my own mom, my mom Della. Graham's, she raised me. Along with Mom, along with a bunch of other people. But we spent lots and lots of time at her house. She taught me more things about life than I can shake a stick at, including and especially learning how to drink coffee. I literally, I can't remember a time I didn't drink coffee. We'd have coffee parties in the afternoon. I was 3-4 years old. I can't remember how young. I wore a Superman cape and stand next to her, and she'd have hers in a cup, and she'd pour mine in a saucer, and I'd go like this. And, I probably told you this story. I don't know. It just reminded me of the power and the impact of the women in my life, and especially that woman. And so now Mom and Grandma, they're laying side by side at Graceland Cemetery in Sioux City. And I'm going to head over there after church this morning and say hi. And then maybe Dad and I are going to have a burger or something. That's going to be my Mother's Day, and I'm looking forward to it. How about you guys? What's your Mother's Day look like? And let me just take a moment here to get something out there that I think is really important. Because for many of you, Mother's Day is going to be a joyous celebration like none other, just like it is every year for you. For others, and let's just be honest here, it's a source of pain, a good bit of source of pain. I remember one of my parishes from another life back 30 years ago now, and they had this tradition where they would hand out flowers to all the mothers. They would do this during the worship service, and every mom, starting with the oldest mom and working down to the youngest mom, would receive a flower. And then at the very end, this was like 1990s reveal party, okay? They would hand a flower to the women who were pregnant, about to have a child, but had not announced it yet. And this was a big deal, and everyone was very excited, right? Imagine, though, being a woman in that congregation and sitting there year after year after year and knowing that you're never going to get a flower because you're incapable of having children. Imagine sitting there, you just recently lost your mom, who was probably your best friend, and instead of her getting that flower, or you getting it on her behalf, you're left with the pain of realizing she's gone and we can't do this anymore. Imagine sitting there and knowing that you're estranged from your mom while everyone else is having a party. I mention this, I don't mean to be a downer here, but I mention this because for years, literally till I came here, I'd never talked about Mother's Day from pulpit. I didn't know how. But, I also got to realizing that ignoring life and the way it unfolds, that's not who we are here. And so I started talking about it again, or for the first time, actually. And, Anna Jarvis, a woman that started Mother's Day back in 1908, she recognized this as well. And so the tradition of handing out flowers goes back to 1908, when Anna Jarvis did this in her home parish in Grafton, West Virginia. She handed out a flower not just to the moms, but to every man, woman, and child that was in attendance. And it was a way of saying, the moms in your life, whoever they might be, we need to honor them. We need to respect them. We need to show them that we deeply appreciate the way God has used them in your lives. And so this morning, guys, I'm sorry you didn't get a flower. You should have. But the women and the girls all got flowers. If you didn't get a flower, there's a few left. Be sure to grab one on the way out. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take that flower out now. And guys, you're going to pretend you have a flower. And those of you who are watching online, pretend you have a flower as well. I'd like you to hold on to it. Okay? And I'd like you to think about the women in your lives, the moms in your lives. Okay? And as you do, if you're in a place of joy, we rejoice with you. And if you're in a place of grief or sorrow, we're with you as well. We do this together as a family called the church. So let's just think about those people in our lives those women in our lives who have changed our world. All right, let's sing.
Take my life that I may be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love. Take my feet and let them be something beautiful for Thee.
Okay, so the story of Ruth, and by the way, thanks, Afton. It is good to have you back. Story of Ruth. It's an Old Testament story. It goes back a long time, and it's a story that begins with hardship and really tragedy and bitterness. You heard that word bitterness when Shelley was reading. It's going to play into this story. And it ends as a story of hope and promise and purpose. So it starts out, Naomi is this woman who's married, and she and her husband are from Bethlehem, but there's a famine in Bethlehem. So it starts with hardship, right? So they decide that they're going to move to a place where maybe they can eke out a living. And so they pick up and they leave and they go to a land called Moab. And while they're there, she and her husband and her two sons, her husband dies, another hardship, and her two sons get married. Married to Orpah, and the other married to Ruth. And 10 years later, those two sons die as well. So here are these three women who are left alone and destitute in a time when, if you were not in some way, shape, or form attached to a man or a male figure, then there was no way you could make a living. You were consigned to poverty for the rest of your life. And furthermore, no husband, no children, no male children, which means that when you die, your family dies with you. And that's what they were faced with. And so Naomi realizes that really the only way she can eke out a living is to go back to Bethlehem and hopefully find somebody of her extended family that would be willing to take her in. But she was quite literally afraid she might starve, because that's how bad it was for her in that time. And so her two daughters-in-law pick up and go with her. And I don't think Naomi's terribly happy about this, because along the way she says, you know what? I can't take care of you. I can't feed you. And there is no hope of you having a child as one of my heirs. So go back home. Go back to Moab. Pick up with your families. Maybe say he'll take care of you. And maybe you'll find someone to marry so that you can fulfill what you're supposed to do. And after some discussion, Orpah decides to leave, but Ruth hangs with her. And Naomi says, nah, you don't want to do this. You don't want to come with me. But then there's that famous passage. Shelley, would you please put that up for us? And read it with me, please. Read it with me. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. That's Ruth talking to Naomi. And you know, she gets done saying this, and you can just hear Naomi sighing. All right, if you want to come with me, we'll starve together. And so the two of them carry on. And they get back to Bethlehem, which is where Naomi is from. And pretty soon, Ruth starts finding a way to just feed the two of them. She goes out in the field and does something called gleaning. She follows the harvest workers behind, and whatever falls on the ground, then she picks it up and she takes it home and they eat it. And as it happens, she does this in the field of a farmer who is a good bit older than she is, but is also, as it turns out, a shirt-tail relative to Naomi, a guy by the name of Boaz. And Boaz shows her kindness. And I'm going through the story quickly. Go read it because it's an amazing story. All right? And so eventually then, by hook and by crook, and by a little bit of manipulating with Naomi, the two of them get married. And then Ruth has a son whose name is Obed. And down the line, Obed has a son whose name is Jesse. And down the line, Jesse has a son whose name is David, the greatest king Israel has ever known. Now think about this. Ruth went from nothing but a life of destitute poverty and starvation to becoming the key to Israel's greatest promise in King David, who, by the way, it doesn't stop there, because over time, eventually, down through the centuries, one of David's descendants will become another king. His name, Jesus of Nazareth. Now, here's the really interesting part. God is mentioned by the players, by the actors in the story, but the narrator never mentions God as an actor in the story. Okay, you got that? So they talk about the Lord, and by the way, Naomi has renamed herself early on. Her name's not Naomi anymore, it's Mara, which means bitterness, because she knows where this is going. Right? But they mention God. Naomi mentions God. Ruth mentions God. He's dealt bitterly with me, is what Naomi says. But God's not acting in this, or so it seems. And yet there he is. He's using the faithfulness of Ruth. He's using the kindness of Boaz. And it starts as a story of hardship and trouble and bitterness. And it ends up being a tale of the salvation of the entire world, including you and me. And you'll notice there is no grand appearance of God anywhere in this. There's no booming voice coming out of the heavens. There's no lightning that strikes. It's just God taking these ordinary circumstances, the hardships and the trials and the troubles of life, the everyday occurrences that we all experience and that we all know, some of them good, many of them not so good, and God takes them and he uses them for his benefit and for his good purpose. That's the way God works in our world. It starts with, for Naomi and Ruth, a story of hardship. It starts with you, maybe, as a story of hardship. And God fashions and forms and uses that to turn it into something that changes your life and changes the lives of those around you. Let's stop and sing.
Take my life that I may be consecrated, Lord, to thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my silver and my gold, none of mine's will I withhold. Take my intellect and use every power as thou shalt choose.
So that brings me to Dolly Parton. Bet you're wondering where I'm going with this, aren't you? Dolly, oh my, she is smart and she's witty. She plays the dumb blonde, but there's nothing dumb about this woman. And she's witty. She talks about that it takes, you wouldn't believe how much money it takes to look this cheap. And it's stuff like this all the time with her. And of course, as you know, the list of her accomplishments are as long as my arm. It's just crazy. But the one thing that's not on her resume is mom. And that was not by choice for her. She got married in 1966 to a man by the name of Carl Dean, whom you probably have never seen because Dolly keeps him pretty well hidden. And I think he likes it that way. And from the very beginning, they just kind of knew they were going to have a family. But it never happened. Tried. Wasn't going anyplace. So eventually she went to the doctor and found out she had something called endometriosis, which led to a surgery, partial hysterectomy, which led for Dolly to depression, which led her to contemplate suicide. To battle that, she threw herself into her career. And that's the Dolly we know, isn't it? Threw herself into her career and did so in ways that she could never have done had she had a family to raise. All right? See where this is going? It brought to her, obviously, lots of celebrity, but it also brought to her a pile of wealth. Now, Dolly's a Christian, and she recognizes that wealth is something that God's blessed her with, and that it's not something she could keep for herself. It became an opportunity for charity. She believes the old saying amongst Christians that to whom much is given, much is expected. And so she looked for ways that she could help, first of all, just her community, the place where she grew up. She grew up in a very poor area of in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. And there was lots of poverty. She grew up in poverty, lots of illiteracy. So she developed something called the Imagination Library. And it started just with that county in Tennessee where she came from. And so every child who was born in that county, from the time they were born until the time they were 5 years old and entering school, they would receive a book a month. All right? The Imagination Library, because she wanted them to imagine what they could be, what they could do, and she wanted them to learn to read. Well, it didn't stop with her county. It's now literally, quite literally, all over the country. And I believe I saw on her website in 50 different countries as well. And you know, God used her. She thought God was going to use her by having a family. It didn't work out that way. Instead, the way Dolly sees it now is everybody's my child. And she's changing the course of lives of people that she will never meet. Sounds a little bit like Ruth and Naomi, doesn't it? And you know, it isn't God that's coming in lightning bolts in the sky or big booming voice. He's just using the everyday hardships and struggles of everyday people. Just like Dolly, just like you, just like me. I mean, I think about the women that were important in my life. And it wasn't just Grams and Mom. It was my other grandma. It was my Aunt Marion, who was my godmother, and my other aunts as well. It was my great Aunt Leva, who by default became the Grindberg matriarch in Sioux City. And then when she passed away, Aunt Petra took that spot. And it wasn't just family. It was Aunt Arista, who didn't have children of her own, but considered the Morningside Lutheran Sunday School her family and her children. She was the superintendent. And she gave of herself tirelessly so that we might learn to know Jesus. Some of my teachers, a woman by the name of Marie Shattuck, my 5th grade teacher, who I had not seen literally since I walked out of Joy Elementary School until the day of my mom's funeral. When there she was. She came over, she hugged me. She'd been thinking about her students all of those years. That was a long time ago. Oh my. Those are the moms in my life. You have the same kind of thing in your life. And for those of you that are women, you have the opportunity to, through the everyday, ordinary experience of your life, whether you have children or you don't, whether you can or you don't want to or you can't, and it doesn't matter. God will use whatever it is that you have, even especially if it's hardship. He won't put it there for you, but He'll use it. He'll use it to change and shape you. He'll use you as a mouthpiece and as hands of love to touch and shape people that you meet every day, and probably even people that you will never meet. Simply because you're here, simply because you are faithful, simply because you are kind, and simply because you care about others the way God cares about you. Happy Mother's Day, everyone. I hope it's a good one for you. I am so proud of this family called First Lutheran. And I look forward every day to sharing that pride and that joy with all of you as we reach out into the world with the love of Jesus.